Assalamualaikum and good day. Hi there, I'm Diana. We meet again for WE013 Writing. I hope you are ready for today's lesson. Before we start, let's look at the objective of our lesson today. By the end of this lesson, students should be able to use appropriate words, expressions, or register for the intended purpose and audience. Before we start, let's warm up a little bit. I'm sure everyone knows already all the important elements of a report writing of MUET. Report writing is question 1 for MUET writing. Now, if you can still remember, you have to write firstly, of course, the title, and then after that you have to write the introduction, and then you have to write the overview, and then after that analysis and synthesis, finally a conclusion. However, for today's lesson, we are going to look at only the words that we are going to use, or the trend words that we are going to use for analysis and synthesis. Let's warm up your knowledge on how to analyze or how to synthesize. Let's warm up a little bit, shall we? Look at this graph. The title is Understanding the COVID-19 Effect on Online Shopping Behavior. As you can see, there are many products there, such as medical, baby products, cleaning, food and beverage, work from home, health and wellness, toys and games, pets, household, beauty care. Well, you get the idea. When you look at this graph, what can you say? How do you analyze it? Now, can you at least type one sentence of an analysis based on this graph? Try and put it in the comment section below, yeah? Now, when you do your analysis or synthesis, of course, you want to use the right word, the correct word, or the correct trend word that describe movements of the graph or the bar chart. Now, for graph which shows this direction, which is up, you can use some of these verbs such as rose to, climb to, escalated to, increase to, soared to, surge to, went up to, boom. Now remember, for report writing, you have to write in past tense because you are reporting something. When you report, you have to use past tense. So make sure that your verb follows that format as well. And for example, if let's say you are not going to use verbs, you want to use nouns next, then use these words to show an upward movements or trends. You can use nouns such as a rise, an increase, a hike, an upward trend, growth, a boom, a dramatic rise, a surge. So you can mix it up. You don't have to keep on using the same trend words or the same movement words, such as increase or rose. Let me give you an example. The first one is using a verb. Sales of Amazon.com soared during COVID-19 pandemic with 20 million purchases by online shoppers worldwide in 2020. Now, still using the same idea, but I change it to a noun, whereby you put the example as there was a hike in the sales of Amazon.com during COVID-19 pandemic with 20 million purchases by online shoppers worldwide in 2020. Remember, for analysis, you must have the key feature, the data, the trend, and also the time frame. I hope you can see that in the example given. Now, normally, what goes up must come down. The same with movements or trends. Now, how do you describe it? So if you are using verbs, you can use verbs such as fell to, decline to, decrease to, dip to, drop to, went down to, slump to, reduce to, and plunge. Let's say you want to make it more interesting. but of course it has to be accurate, you can still use nouns. So you can use nouns such as a fall, a decline, a decrease, a drop, a dip, a slump, a reduction, or a plunge. Let's look at the example now. For number 1, the number of travelers to Australia decreased to nearly 80% due to COVID-19 pandemic in August 2020. So the verb which I use is decreased. Then if I want to change it to a noun, you can write it this way. There was a decrease, put it in parentheses, nearly 80% in the number of travelers to Australia due to COVID-19 pandemic in August 2020. Now you must be thinking, what if there is no movement at all? There's no up and down. Then the direction will be horizontal, which normally means a straight line. So what kind of verbs that you can use? So you can use these verbs: leveled out at, remain stable at, stayed constant at, remain unchanged at, or remain steady at. Again, I would like to remind you that for report writing, the verbs used have to be in the past tense. For nouns, normally we use no change. I'll show you the example later. These are the examples. For number 1, the number of customers to Maju restaurant remain unchanged, in parentheses 50 customers per day in July 2020 despite the lift of Conditional Movement Control Order or CMCO. So the verb which I used was remain unchanged. Now what if I want to change it to a noun? So you can see the second example. There was no change in the number of customers to Maju restaurant, in parentheses 50 customers per day in July 2020 despite the lift of Conditional Movement Control Order or CMCO. Now what if you have up and down of the movement or trends? Well, of course you can use verbs such as rose and fell. That would be the most common that you can use. However, you can also use a lot of other verbs to show movements or trends, such as fluctuated around, change, peaked at if you want to focus on only a certain point of the graph, or stood at, or plateaued at. And if let's say you want to use nouns, then you can use a rise and fall, a fluctuation, a change, a peak, or a plateau. Let's look at the example now. The number of COVID-19 patients fluctuated every day, in parentheses, between 100 and 200 patients in Permai Hospital in 2020. So I use verb in the first example. The second one, I change it to a noun. There was a fluctuation of COVID-19 patients every day, in parentheses, between 100 and 200 patients in Permai Hospital in 2020. Sometimes when you are analyzing stimuli, you may also be required to state the degree of change and speed of change. Here are some useful adjectives and adverbs that you can use to describe the changes. For example, if you look at the degree of change, from the adjective dramatic, you add ly and it becomes adverb. So, it becomes dramatically, steep, steeply, substantial, substantially, moderate, moderately, slight, slightly, minimal, minimally. So that is the degree of change. In terms of speed, these are the adjectives that you can use, and you can change it to adverbs as well. Rapid, rapidly, quick, quickly, steady, steadily, gradual, gradually, abrupt, abruptly, slow, slowly. Now please bear in mind, whenever you use the speed of change to express the movement, you must make sure that it is describing the trend or the movement accurately. So for example, if you want to use the word abruptly, it has to come to a halt, meaning that it has to stop abruptly. Let's look at the example. The number of people purchasing face masks increased significantly in 2020, in parentheses, 20% in 2019 and 80% in 2020 due to COVID-19 pandemic. So you can see the significant increase from 20% in 2019 and 80% in 2020. Then only you can use the adverb significantly, because you can see major change from 2019 to 2020. Let's look at the second example. There was a gradual decrease in the number of people tested positive for COVID-19 in 2020. I put in parentheses 70% in January, 65% in February, 60% in March, 50% in April, and 45% in May. Whenever you use the word a gradual decrease, you must show that the decrease is gradually, not abruptly. Now, sometimes you may also be asked to describe rank, rate, or position of certain data. Now, these are the examples that you can use while describing them. So, for example, ranking from top to bottom, you have to use the word most important. For example, given there, the most important trend is the main priority, you have to pay the most attention to, rank as their first choice. Now, next in importance, you can use the words such as the second, the third, the fourth in importance, or rank, higher or lower than. Please remember to use higher than or lower than, not higher without than. Least important, then you can use this example, the least important, rank at the bottom, or place the least importance on. Please remember this. Do not use increase or decrease when describing rank, ranking, rate, or rating. You can use the comparative or superlative adjectives such as higher, highest, lower, and lowest. I hope we have achieved our objective for today, but let's recap. By the end of this lesson, students should be able to use appropriate words, expressions, register for the intended purpose and audience. I believe we have done that, and I hope that you can apply this in the upcoming practice. Well, what's theory without practice? You need to apply what you have learned. Therefore, practices 1, 2, and 3 will be given to you by your lecturer through Google Form or Google Classroom. Good luck! Well, that's all for today. Hope you have learned something, and most importantly, please stay safe at home. Thank you. Bye.